I think for a lot of people, they shut down. They don't talk about their grief. They'll either overwork, underperform, binge on something, develop destructive habits. And it's all because they're trying to go around grief instead of going through it.
Hi, everybody, and welcome to another episode of the Glam Reaper podcast. I'm your host, Jennifer Muldowney, aka the Glam Reaper. Although definitely today, more of the Reaper and less of the Glam, as I just got back from a very, very long drive, 10 hours to North Carolina, where I was helping a funeral home with a body down to North Carolina, where we worked on aquamation or water cremation, as a lot of people know about it. We've talked about it on the podcast. So I might do a whole podcast or video about that experience, but very, very interesting. But anyway, so forgive the tiredness, forgive less of the glam today, but I'm very, very excited for my next guest. We were connected through a fantastic women's networking group here in New York. Clearly, I'm very overtired right now. A women's networking group called Luminary that's based here in New York City. So I would like to welcome an Ayurvedic doctor and author, Sweta. Welcome.
Thank you, Jennifer. And for those of you tuning in, big gratitude. Jennifer still looks fabulous. She's just underplaying it. And it's incredible, 10 hours. Wow. And that's a little body. That's intense work.
It was intense work. It was 10 hours down, and it was actually longer coming back. It was a whole story. So it was a lot of things. We had to meet the family down there. They didn't arrive on time. They actually fell asleep at the wheel. They had a car accident. It was a whole thing.
Oh my God.
It was supposed to be sort of a just down there one day and back up the next day. But,
right.
It ended up spanning over 3 days. But I'm not going to use this episode to talk all about that, as interesting as the whole water cremation is. I really want Sweta for you to tell the listeners of the Glam Reaper podcast all about you.
Well, thank you. I am excited to be here. My name is Sweta Vikram. I am an author of 14 books. The Loss That Binds Us is my 14th book. I'm an Ayurvedic doctor and a speaker. So I help people thrive in their own terms when it comes to the diet lifestyle and to help lead a life without excessive boundaries. Because I'm one of those people, if you tell me you can't do this starting tomorrow, then tonight I'm going to be like, I'm doing all of that. So it's like, how do we find that holistic balance without judgment, less criticism, and kindness to itself? So that's the work that I do, and I do it through one-on-one Ayurvedic coaching. I teach workshops, do speaking engagements at entrepreneurial spaces like Luminary, the one that Jennifer just mentioned, at corporations. And I also write for magazines and wellness articles and books and things like that.
Amazing. And tell us the book that you have. You will tell us a little bit about that, but how did you come to write that book? What made you sort of go into the grief space as such, which, by the way, in the 10-hour drive down and back that myself and my colleague had, we talked about all that, and I was sort of like, right, because all the food is terrible, the food options on these drives. Oh, yeah. Right, the diet starts the day I get back, you've got to do this. So I love all of this. We might talk about that another time, but I do want to specifically talk about this book and sort of the journey that got you to this point.
So, in May of 2023, exactly a year ago, suddenly we get a call. My dad is not doing well, and I was in India in April. So he was okay then. And then we board a plane, then we get a call. Oh, my father-in-law is in the ICU. And we lost my dad and my father-in-law, again, unexpectedly, 2 days apart. And this is around the time of my mom's 9th death anniversary. So May to me is a whole other beast that I'd rather erase from my calendar. No offense to anyone who celebrates May. This is just my personal feeling, and it's still very raw because I got back from Asia, Singapore and India just on Sunday. I wanted to do this trip before the 1 year. And I wrote this book because my dad would always say, we need to normalize grief. We need to have conversations around the most natural thing in this world, because every culture has these taboos, has these negative connotations, there's shame around grief, and death doesn't discriminate. You know this because of your work.
Yeah.
But I know friends, families who have been shunned by others or abandoned once they started, dealing with grief, and in this case, specifically the loss of a loved one. It's as if like their grief was contagious, or as if it was shameful. The other reason I wrote this book was because I wanted it to be simple. When you're going through something so hard, you don't want to sit with a piece of literature that is like 500 pages old. You want something simple, because I didn't have access to that. The grief also brings around this dark side in us, right? No one talks about that, because the world we live in, we are just supposed to discuss highlighted reels of our lives. Well, everything has to be that great. You talking about a 10-hour ride not being the best. People are like, yeah, but I wanted to hear about the spots that she saw, the places where she ate at. So I think we're so conditioned, unfortunately, to projected lives, to projections and performances, that authentic, vulnerable stories go missing in people's lives. And when someone asked me, why don't people talk about grief? I said, because they're shunned. There's grief hierarchy. There's grief comparison. People tell you when to stop grieving. It's such an individual journey. So I think there were so many reasons. Firstly, I wanted to talk about the raw side of grief, but also when you're on the other side, and the other side means different things to different people in the grief journey, what are the ways to honor those you've lost? Yeah. So it's the whole gamut, the whole journey. And I want to honor that grief and grieving, the individual journeys. But I think grief is also very universal. It's an experience none of us get to miss.
Yeah. No, absolutely. And gosh, everything you're saying there is so on point. It's kind of wild. It's so sad to me that and we just recently recorded a podcast with Rebecca from Modern Loss, and exactly kind of the same thing, where she was just sort of, the experience she went through and how she started it sort of nearly just as a blog to sort of just talk about her emotions and kind of get her thoughts out there, and now it's grown into this huge thing, and she's also an author and stuff, and even like my little TEDx talk that I did so many years ago now, but it was about my pet loss, because I felt sort of people judged that as a less than, and I felt that, and so like I lead the audience on a bit of a journey of them thinking it's maybe my granny or something. And then I'm like, it's my dog. Are you judging me differently now? Because we place these judgments. And exactly as you said, like people just aren't comfortable to sit in grief. Like I actually think it's one of the reasons why I'm nearly successful at what I do, because I don't treat my clients like they're about to break, like they're an eggshell and they're about to break. I don't whisper to them. I don't sort of do the typical funereal, quote unquote, funereal things. I very much treat them like a normal human being. And I sit in there, I let them grieve. I don't sort of say, okay, now we need to talk about the event and now you need to just stop crying. It's sort of a, okay, let's just sit here and let's just figure this out. And it's a very fascinating part of being human that we do. And it just what you said there about how we show like these highlighted reels. I don't know how many times people have said to me, and especially recently actually, because I did so much travel and now I've added North Carolina as well. But they're like, oh my God, like you travel so much and gosh, to live that life. And I'm like, you have no clue. Just because, and in this last 3 days, or 4 days, whatever it was, I think I posted like a photo of a martini and I maybe posted a photo of a hotel room. But those were the two tiny moments of joy that was in the entire, escapade. And it's just so fascinating. I really like that that you just said we focus on these like summarized reels of good stuff and we don't actually get into the vulnerability. Why is that?
I think it's again because lack of acceptance. To me, yoga has been transformative, not physically. Oh, yes, physically, sure, but that could be other forms as well. I think yoga and Ayurveda is the science of life, have been mentally really transformative. Like they've taught me to be more self-reliant. Sure, we all love external validation. Who doesn't want 50 people standing and telling them, oh my God, I hear you, but that's not going to happen. And I think for a lot of people, they shut down, they don't talk about their grief. They'll either overwork, underperform, binge on something, develop destructive habits. And it's all because they're trying to go around grief instead of going through it. Yeah. And it's something I'm realizing even in my clients. And what you said, Jennifer, is so profound. At one of my events recently at a cemetery, I did this whole grief workshop, and this couple came up to me and they were like, our loss wasn't as significant as yours. I said, what did you lose? It could be loss of health. It could be job loss. Grief is the response to any kind of loss. It's like, we lost a cat. I said, was the cat a family member to you? They were like, yes. I said, so your grief, we don't have to compare, but is just as big as anyone else's. So in just hearing that, they were like, oh, no one has ever said that to us. So they never thought they had the permission to talk about the pet just the way someone had the permission to talk about a dead relative, right? And there was another woman who was like, she had just gotten laid off from a job that she'd worked at for I believe 2 decades, if I'm not butchering the dates. There was grief of that. Like, who am I outside of this work? So there's the loss of identity. I'm like, you hold your space for your grief. There's no comparison, just because I lost my dad and my father-in-law doesn't mean my grief is bigger than yours. But they were like, no one has ever said that to them. And I think the way we are trained as society, everything is a competition. Everything is a comparison. Even in our case, because both my parents are now gone, my husband still has his mom. People were trying to rationalize how her grief was more important than my husband's grief or his sister's grief. So I'm like, how are we comparing loss of a husband and loss of a father? They're both really monumental losses.
Yeah.
And I think that's one of the reasons people just don't talk about this judgment, this criticism, and this comparison. Like, grief is so heavy. Grief is never light. It weighs us down, metaphorically, physically, emotionally, in every which way. And then you have the burden of being told, well, sit there in a corner because your story doesn't matter. You're relying, when you're going through the grieving period, we all rely on people to get us. But when the same people tell you your story is not as important as someone else's, they choose to shut down.
Yeah. No, and it's so true. Everything you're saying, and even back to the yoga, comment you made, I personally, I love hot yoga, and exactly what you said. And I think it can apply to a lot of forms of exercise, especially non-team, solo sports, like running or walking or whatever. There is this meditative state you can get into. So that's the one thing you're focused on. And I have to say, and I actually have been really bad with it because I've been traveling and kind of sick a lot since Christmas, but it was my 1 hour that I would take out of the day where the phones would be off, I was inaccessible, and it was just me and myself in the mirror. What everyone else was doing on either side of me, it really taught me about that. It taught me to kind of appreciate my body, to not be looking at the person beside me, because the person beside me could be a gymnast or a ballerina, or there's different strength. And also even just for myself, like one day I'd go in, I'd be flexible as a pretzel. Then another day I'd go in, I couldn't touch my toes. And then there's the emotional releases that you find through yoga as well. But again, you could find that running or whatever. It's all these different. But exactly that, one of the things so my TEDx talk was called "Grief is Unique as Your Heartbeat," because we all have a different heartbeat. And so why would our grief be the same? Like two twins, set of twins, they're not going to grieve a mom the same because there's a slightly different relationship. Even if it's just minuscule, it's still reflective through, I don't know how many times I've said this, whether it's in writing, or, on podcasts or whatever interviews I'm doing. You and I will never experience this moment, the moment that just went. We will never experience, no one in the world will ever experience that again. No one ever in this world will sit here having come from an hour drive, with allergies and sitting here talking to you and having this conversation. It's a moment in time that poof, once it's gone, it's gone. Right. And it's just, we're so unique. So why do we sort of think that grief should be boxed into these little compartments and, okay, your pet loss, so, you're not so big as child loss or losing a mom, that's different. Or even in my case, which I talk about in the TED Talk and in various different things since, is how I got into this business was 2 of my best friends lost their siblings. Now I say that, but actually one of them she lost her cousin, but he was like a sibling to her. So, but when I say that to people, she lost her cousin, they kind of, it's not as bad. But he was like her brother because they were both only children. Do you know what I mean? So absolutely, why you're judging her, it's just fascinating how we prioritize who gets to have what,
Right. And who is to tell somebody else what the relationship should be, whether it's to a cat, a dog, a cousin, a friend, or whatever have you. Right. And people don't realize, because very often the burnout happens because of unresolved grief. Diseases happen, mental health challenges arise because of unresolved grief. We cannot go around grief. And even in our house, both my husband and I were grieving. I'm an external process. I need to write. That's how I make sense of stuff. And I talk about things. And then one day, like I was very skeptical to go to India this time around. When I first went to Singapore, that's where my brother is. So my heart healed like, oh, by one sibling, the only, the blood relation I have alive. Then I landed in India. And when I was filling out the immigration form, there was the first time in 20 plus years, I didn't use my dad's number or address. And that's when I'm like, that's how temperamental grief is. But and I'm not a crier. And that's one of my problems. It's like I don't cry easily, but when I do, I hold space for it. I just broke down, and people around me were looking at me, and I'm like, that's okay. This isn't about what they think of me. This is about what I need to do. But because I allowed myself that space, like, holy crap, this sucks. This is so real. Like, oh, you're an adult orphan. Like, that's the voice I heard in my head. Then it changed my relationship with India. Okay, so what is this to me now? Is this the country of my ancestors? Do I go back here as a tourist? All of these conversations of people don't allow themselves to go there. They're like, oh, just before I land, I'll have a drink so I don't need to deal with this.
Yeah. And it's interesting, like just what you said even there about breaking down in public and how, immediately we kind of think what people will think of us. But I would say I've talked to, obviously, I would say thousands definitely, but maybe even millions, I don't know, people about grief and bereavement and stuff like that. And I think a lot of them would say that sometimes, and oftentimes, I would even say, a stranger can be more kind to you and your grief, where you're at in your grief, than your friends and your family, because they have this image of, who Jennifer is and how strong she's supposed to be or not supposed to be. And so there's a certain, she's got to do this. Like one of my best friends said to me quite recently, what did he say? That I'm the most, I persevere no matter what. He was like, he said, no matter what, you just go through. And I thought, yeah, but there'll be a day when I won't be able to. And you need to be okay with that, Jennifer, too, resilient. That was the exact word he used. I was resilient. And I just think and I remember when we put our dog down and we were there for 16 years, I went to the local church, and while I was raised Catholic, I don't really go to the church very often. But I went to the church because it just felt like the place I needed to be. And this woman showed me such incredible kindness that I'd nearly get upset about it now, because I was just sitting there sobbing my heart out. Whereas, sometimes if you do that in the company of friends, they don't know what to do and they feel awkward, and you then feel more worse because you're feeling, their shame and their awkwardness, and it becomes this whole thing. So, yeah, in some ways, like a stranger can show kindness.
Absolutely. And I think what you said resonated so deeply with me, much like you have people refer to me as like the strong and resilient one. And, don't use that against me. So my point with everyone has been like, stop labeling grievers, stop labeling people, period, but especially those who are grieving. Because when you say that you're so strong, you're so resilient, I hear, okay, don't need to cry, don't need to be vulnerable. We know you've got this. You shut down. And, then you don't check in on people. And then they're also the absolutionists, right? They'll check in once, I checked in on somebody who was grieving. So it becomes a plethora of reasons why people don't ever, really heal on a cellular level. See, I feel like it never goes away. Someone you've loved and is gone, whether it's a pet or a person, or end of a friendship or end of a marriage, like you're going to feel that loss. But the intensity does decrease over a period of time. But how much it decreases and how deeply the healing happens, how deep the healing happens, it depends on the opportunity someone has had to work on their own grieving and healing. Like, I have a friend who was saying to me that, her dad passed away, and there was a birthday on her in-law side, and a couple of months later, or it was around her dad's birthday, that there was a celebration. And she's like, no one really cares. Like, because this person is gone. Yes, we've cried, we've offered flowers. We'll go to the cemetery and all of that stuff, but offer flowers. But there's an alive person, so let's just go celebrate them. And she was like, they're two equally important situations. I am not saying I won't celebrate, but why can't you give me the space to mourn? So also there is this timeline that people add, which I think is so frustrating. If someone is really in that bad of a situation, get mental health help. But sometimes it's okay to it'll take time. There will be days where you're just in your pajamas and curled up like a prawn on the floor, for lack of a better description. And that's how grief can feel.
Yeah.
But people aren't given the permission. It's like, yeah, now that's done, move on. When I was in India, somebody said that to me, losing your parents is circle of life. And I'm thinking, how privileged to be you. Everyone in your family is alive and you can say that to me. And I was like, I never thought in my 40s I'd be an adult orphan. I was just being vulnerable. And they were like, it happens all the time. I'm like, I don't think it happens all the time. It's sad if it's happened to anyone. But the point is, even if you are, I know this woman in my gym who's in her 60s and she lost her mom when she turned 101. And even then, I always remind her, like, so what? She was still your mom. It doesn't matter how old you are or how old she was. And I think I wish people had a little bit more empathy. It's like, instead of trying to say, let's wrap up this conversation because I'm uncomfortable.
Yeah. And you know what? It is very fascinating as well, because being in this space, working in the death space in general, and it is evolving, right? And there's a lot more young people coming into it, and people are getting more vocal about it and writing about it and things like that. And I find it fascinating to watch, though, because I do think there's different sides to it. So, for example, we're talking about it more, and so people are kind of airing the, well, I hate when somebody says everything happens for a reason, or, there's certain terms that people are like, never say that to me, never say that. And people are kind of burn at the stake who say that. And I have to say, I'm a bit on the other side where I'm like, I absolutely understand the frustration when somebody says something that hurts you when you're grieving. I understand that. But I do also feel, as a society, we have to look after ourselves, right? Like, at the end of the day, it comes down to self-love. Like, there's nobody going to love you or take care of you better than you can take care of yourself.
Absolutely.
In that, we're responsible for also communicating that this is what I need for my grief. Like, for example, you might be somebody who is an angry griever and just needs to vent, right? Once a day or whatever it might be. I might be somebody who cries into this pillow or whatever. Like, we're all totally different human beings. And I just feel like, like somebody said, actually, I think it was commented on something on Instagram, on my company's Instagram page, where it was like, I can't stand when people say passed on or passed away. They're dead. They're just dead. Whereas I was like, yeah, but Jennifer, like, if my mum dies, or when my mum dies, like, I think I understand where that person's coming from. But I feel like if she turns around and says your mom's dead, that's a brutal word. I feel like I would be a bit sort of like, oh my God, like, I know she is, but like the word. So my point was, I understand that that's you don't like that. That doesn't mean that the world has to get on board with what you agree. So, for example, like, and I'm saying this, I guess, because it's one of my, everything happens for a reason. That is a really hard statement, and I would never say it to somebody who has just lost a person. I wouldn't. But I say it a lot about things that happen in my own life. Like, I have, I've missed a train or a plane has delayed something, and I'm like, everything happens for a reason, Jen. You're meant to meet somebody at the airport who you weren't going to, or blah, 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 blah. It's just, that helps me sort of look at things positively and sort of move through, put one foot in front of the other. I would never say to somebody who lost somebody, right. Oh, the point is, we all deal with things differently. And I do think it's our responsibility as a human being, as in ourselves, to, as much as we can, and this is a big ask of somebody who's grieving, but as much as possible, to communicate to your loved ones, this is what I need from you. I would rather if you didn't say things like this. And when I talk about mom, it's okay. Like, please don't get all uncomfortable. Like, I really want to just talk about her and let's share those stories. And actually, as a celebrant, when I'm giving a service, and the family will always okay this, but when I'm giving a service, a lot of times at the very, very end, and families are like, oh my God, please, thank you so much for saying that. The very, very end, I'll say, they're not always in this exact way, but I'll say, there's a saying that they say we die twice. Once when we leave our physical bodies, and the second time when somebody says our name for the last time. So I urge you today to continue to talk about person, and to continue for months, weeks, years. The family will appreciate it. The person hasn't just disappeared. They want to hear the memories and all those gorgeous things that the person, the legacy they've left. And because it is, I don't want to upset you by talking about your parents. It's like, don't want to upset her. Like, I really like her, and like, but you won't talk about it.
Absolutely. And it's something I recommend in my book, The Loss That Binds Us. It's one of the ways to keep their memory. There are many ways, right? Cook their favorite foods. Like my dad being dad, like Old Spice. My mom loved jasmine, mograss. Those scents are in my home office, right? Created a little altar next to my desk, celebrating their birthdays, anniversaries, donating to their favorite causes. But also, most importantly, talking about them, saying their name, keeping their essence alive. In fact, I have a very dear friend, and I really appreciate it. I was telling her I'm going to borrow her words for when somebody else is in that situation. She was like, I haven't, and I know that she's not lost her parents, and knock on wood. She's like, and I've known her for 30 years. And she's like, we've kind of grown up together. And it just, I don't know what to say. I want to be, and I was like, you are there for me. And sometimes silence is a beautiful form of support. So for anyone who is listening in, sometimes just ask the person, because a griever is dealing with so much heaviness. I love Jennifer's suggestion that as grievers, we need to communicate. But sometimes there's just so much going on. We have these expectations which we don't communicate.
Yes.
But when someone comes in and says, what can I do? Instead of saying, this is what you might be feeling, or this is what you should do, or wrap it up and move on. What can I do? And I think enough people will just say, just knowing that you're there makes me feel supported, or loved, or, visible or seen when you're grieving, because grief is so heavy, but I think grieving is so light because it's very isolating.
Yes. I don't disagree. And do you know what? I love that. And my next question was to talk about the tips from your book. And just like from my own little random personal experience, and I wasn't in the business at all at the time, but like that, my best friend who lost her cousin, who was like a brother to her, when he died and she rang me and told me, I dropped everything and I went down. It was down the country in Ireland. I went down, but I just thought of again, okay, what can I do? What can I do to help? Because, and that's, I guess, that's nearly what I was trying to get across there, is most people aren't saying, oh, everything happens for a reason or whatever, to hurt you. They're trying to make you feel better. And we all, as grievers, do also, and look, that is a huge ask, but most people are not trying to hurt you. They're trying. And so there's also a thing of a space that we need to forgive and sort of hold that space a bit for them, that, okay, this person said the worst thing they could to me, but I know they didn't mean it like a dagger to the heart, like it came at. But I brought my best friend down. We laugh about it still to this day. I did a little care package for her where I went to the local store. I bought her some panties. I bought her, she'll hate me telling this, but I bought her that. I bought her some vitamin C soluble things. I bought her some chocolate. I bought her all these just tiny little things, because I knew she had dropped everything and raced to his side down the country. So, and when I got down and gave it to her, she was like, Jen, oh my God, thank you so much. Like, I didn't pack a thing. She was like, it was everything I needed. And she was like, but because I know her so well. And I thought, well, she would have dropped everything to be with him. So I'm sure she probably didn't bring a change of pants and, all these.
That's amazing.
But then, and I hold my hand up with this, and I've talked about it before, but then in the same breath, that same best friend who I do know so well, her cousin, I was also friends with, right? And I, on social media, made a comment about how his light would always shine. It was something like that. And it was something trivial, but it was something like that, where I was just putting it on his page or whatever. She didn't talk to me for 3 months. I was brokenhearted. I didn't know what had happened. I didn't know if it was just because she was grieving or whatever. And it took her seeing a therapist to actually come back to me. And I kept trying to reach out or whatever. And she said, because she's atheist, it insulted her. And she thought, how could my best friend do this to me? How could Jennifer be so cruel to me when she knows that I don't believe his light is still going or whatever? But what she said it took her going to therapy to realize, but that was how I was dealing with it, because I believe his light is still going. I forgot, she said, in my grief, I forgot that you were also grieving. You weren't just my best friend supporting me. You were grieving his loss too. And it was just a really interesting conversation for us to come together and have. Because you have all these people who are around you and have different relationships with the different people. So And it's a learning curve. I mean, certainly didn't mean to hurt her in any way form, right? So let's talk a bit more about the tips, because I loved that, like celebrating the person, their birthdays, and I love that sense of the foods. Like, what would be your, I guess, maybe top 5 from the book?
So top 5 is to keep the essence alive. So talk about them. And I'm not saying this in a guru sort of way to go crazy or whatever, but like I'll give you an example. I had tickets booked to go to India for my dad's birthday, but he suddenly died 3 months prior to that. So we did a little birthday party at home. And my aunt, his sister, wore a new sari, and she said, he got this for my anniversary, and they didn't get to see me wear this. So I'm like, that's his picture at the altar. Stand in front of it. And I'm like, this is a crazy idea now if you start chasing his picture and quit on life. But if in that moment, just let him know that, hey, I won the sari, like, what do you think of it? I said, you know what? It just makes you feel connected. Don't get too cerebral about the process. So connect the way, like I look for mystical signs. If there's a butterfly or a pigeon or, lights flickering.
Yeah.
I'll have people say, but like, how can you prove? I said, how can you prove otherwise either? If this brings me solace, like I say, I'm not quitting on life and chasing pigeons through Central Park, right? So find your ways of what makes you feel connected to, like, oh, they're trying to reach out. Cooking their favorite foods can be incredible. Even like I said, mogra or Indian jasmine and allspice, like I keep them. So, and I was very close to my father. So if it's going to be a tough day at work, or if it's been a tough day, I'll dab a little around my wrist. I'm like, I just feel he's there. And I wasn't the child who would reach out and say, I have a problem. I've been very self-reliant. But now because they're gone, I just feel, oh, there's no one there. And again, don't put that pressure on your partner. That'll be my follow-up suggestion. In our case, it was an extreme situation where both me and my husband had lost a dad each. But even otherwise, your partner has other responsibilities too. Yes, they have one towards you, but their family as well, their sibling, their parents, all of that. So becoming self-reliant is extremely important. And that would look like different things to different people, and it doesn't happen overnight. But like relying more on yourself.
Yeah.
Also, expectations can be so evil. And I've dealt with that. I have a tendency to overextend myself. So when I was dealing with my grief, I expected that. Nothing materialistic, only emotional. I'm the kind of person who'll remember my friend's mom's death anniversary, her favorite color, her favorite foods. And I'll then send out a group message and have everyone wear her favorite color, take a selfie, make a collage, cook their favorite food. So when I was dealing with my grief, I had those expectations. And in reflection, I realized no one asked me to do that. If that's my nature, I need to own it. And then maybe take a few steps back, because it is exhausting to remember everything, right? But then also checking, like Jennifer, I loved your point. Like people are trying to be nice. Everyone tries to show up in different ways.
Yeah.
People show support in different ways. So, don't be rigid about this is what support looks like, because that's when we push our loved ones away. Because, no one can match up to your expectations. And even you don't know what your expectations are. They're all up here.
Yeah. That's absolutely brilliant, and actually a wonderful kind of bringing the conversation to a close, because I actually, again, the 10-hour drive in the car, we obviously had lots to discuss, but one of the things I learned really, really young when I was in my 20s, actually, in living in Washington, DC, I had super high expectations for friends, because I am a very good friend, and I am that friend who shows up, texts on birthdays, texts on death anniversaries, all of the things. I like have calendar reminders. I'm just that person. But not everybody is, and you can't have those expectations, exactly as you said. And so I learned this quote, and I only repeated it to my friend here because that's exactly, he was kind of going through this struggle. And I said, listen, just because somebody doesn't love you the way you love them doesn't mean they don't love you with all that they have.
Absolutely.
And I think if you you nearly have to kind of sit down and look at that, or repeat it a few times before you really go, wow. So just because somebody doesn't show up the way you want them to show up doesn't mean they're not showing up with all that they have in that moment.
Exactly.
And that's all you can ask from people.
I absolutely agree. And I think it's so much better for your own mental peace.
Yeah.
And it's so much better. And it's a lesson we learn. And like, at least in my case, I was like, maybe I was overdoing it. And that's my nature, bravo. But scale back. Because if there are expectations, that's not healthy either.
No.
Like being okay to the idea of self-growth. That's brought upon by grief.
Yeah. Yes, that's it. It's absolutely amazing. Well, listen, thank you so much. This was super inspirational and a wonderful episode to record after such an arduous journey, honestly. I feel full of the love again, which is great. But thank you so much. Everybody, please go out and purchase the book and maybe do another show and tell there. It's an incredible book, and so go out and buy it, and we'll connect you. We'll leave all the links and everything for people down below this video and on the podcast in the description. And just thank you so much for joining us.
Thank you for having me, Jennifer. And to everyone who's tuning in, wish you health, happiness, and healing.